Hello students, in the last lecture we have studied about differentiation. In this lecture we are going to study about integration. Now what integration is? The process of integration is just the reverse of differentiation. In this symbol is used for integration. So what basically integration is? Integration simply means summation. Summation means adding up of things. In differentiation we divide things, whereas in case of integration we add up things. Now what is the use of integration if we can simply add? So we'll study in this lecture. Now summation is basically used for discrete values. Discrete values means those values which can be easily added up, whereas integration is used for summation of continuous function. Now what basically is the meaning of discrete value and continuous function? This we'll understand with the help of a graph. Now let's study first this graph. As you can see, the curve is a straight line which is parallel to x-axis. Now if we need to find out the area under the curve, then how it can be done? Let's say we need to find the area between point A and B. Let's say this is point A and this is point B, and the starting point is indicated by the red line. Similarly, the end point is also indicated by a red line. Now how to find out the area under this curve? What we'll do is we'll divide this area into equal rectangular area, and if we find the area of one rectangle, the shaded portion, and simply add up, then we'll get the total area under the curve. It is quite a simple process. So what will be the area of the shaded region? It will be y into x. As you can see, this red line indicates this is y, and let us say this is x. So the area of this shaded rectangle will be y into x. So the total area under the curve will be summation of y into x. Summation of y into x. Let's count how many rectangles are there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And as we know that the area of each rectangle is same, so can I write this summation of I, where I is equal to 1 to 10. So we'll find just one area and we will summation it, or we'll add up. So we'll finally get the area under the curve. So it is quite a simple process. So we have used summation. What if the curve is a kind of continuous function? Let's say this kind of function. Now how to find out the area under the curve in this case? Let's say again we have to find area between point A and B, which are indicated by the red lines. What we'll do is we'll again divide them into this shape. Let's say the thickness of this is dx, as you can see in the diagram, and this distance is y. So the area of shaded region will be y into dx. How to find out the total area under the curve? As you can see, if I divide it into number of rectangles, all the rectangles won't be equal, so I can't simply add them up. What will I do is I'll use the process or the phenomena of integration. So integration is helpful in finding out summation of some continuous curves. Here we can't use your summation thing, we have to use integration, as the rectangle in each case won't be having similar area. As you can see clearly over here, if I draw a rectangle over here, the height might change or the breadth might change. So to find out the area of curve or area under the curve, we use integration. So in the last lecture we have studied that differentiation is used to find out slope, and now you have understood that integration is used to find out any area under the curve. As we have discussed that integration is mainly used to find out area under the curve, so on the basis of this we divide integration into two types: definite integral and indefinite integral. Indefinite integral means we are not stating its starting or ending point. In case of definite integral, we will state its starting and the end point. Now we will go through some formula which are helpful in understanding integration. So first one is, if y is a function of x such that y is equal to x to the power n, then the integration of y dot dx will be x n to the power 1 upon n plus 1 plus c, where n should not be equal to minus 1. You must remember that n should not be equal to minus 1. Now what this c is? Here c is integration constant. Now what is the use of integration constant? See, if it is indefinite integral, we are going to get a value in the form of some variable. If we simplify this, we are going to get an answer in the form of variables. So we are not going to get the exact area. It means in the variable some kind of constant value must be added, and we don't know that constant value. So we have used this integration constant. If it was a definite integral, this integration constant would not have been there. Now what definite integral is, we will study after this. Now moving on, if it is simply dx, so can we write it as in the form of x to the power 0 dot dx? We will use this formula again and we will get x. So simply integration of dx is equal to x. It is quite simple. If you are using so many dx, छोटे छोटे बहुत सारे एरिया ले रहे हैं, उन सबको इंटीग्रेट करेंगे, then we'll finally get x. If we go through this diagram again, so if we continuously integrate dx, then it will be almost equal, or you can say it will be equal to x. So integration of simply dx is always x. Similarly, integration of dy will be equal to y. Moving on, if y is equal to c x to the power n, where c is a constant, then if we integrate it, we'll take the constant out of the integration and simplify it using the first formula. Moving on, if y is equal to 1 by x or x to the power n, if x to the power n, where n is minus 1, then we can't use this formula. We'll directly apply that if y is equal to x to the power 1, then y dot dx, integration of y dot dx will be equal to log x plus c, where c is the integration constant. Similarly, if y is equal to ex, then integration of y dot dx will be ex only. Moving on, y is equal to sin x, and what will be integration? See, as we have discussed that integration is opposite of differentiation, so we'll use this fundamental over here. What will be the integration of sin x? As you know that differentiation of cos x is minus sin x. So if we integrate sin x, we'll get cos x. Reverse it. Differentiation of cos x होता है minus sin x. तो अगर sin x को इंटीग्रेट करेंगे तो वापस हमें उल्टा मिल जाएगा. उल्टा will be cos x और minus sign will be there. So integration of sin x is equal to minus cos x. If the function is in the form of y is equal to sin nx, then integration will be, as you know, integration of sin x is minus cos x. You will simply write this value over here. Let's take an example. If y is equal to sin 3x, then what will be its integration? So integration y dot dx will be equal to minus cos 3x upon 3 plus c. C is over there because it is a indefinite integral. Then if y is equal to cos x, then what will be the integration? As we know, differentiation of sin x is cos x, so integration of cos x will be equal to sin x. Then y is equal to sec square x. Now as we know, differentiation of tan x is sec square x, so integration of sec square x will be equal to tan x. Moving on, if y is equal to cos x square x, as we know, differentiation of cot x is minus cos x square x, so integration of cos x square x will be equal to minus cot x. Similarly, if y is equal to sec x tan x, then integration of sec x tan x dot dx will be equal to sec x, as differentiation of sec x is sec x tan x. Similarly, y is equal to cos x cot x, it will be equal to minus cos x plus c. Now moving on, we'll study what definite integral is. As I have explained you that if the integration is done between two known points, then such kind of integration is known as definite integral. So when a function is integrated between definite limits, then such integration is known as definite integral. As you can see, y is equal to fx means y is a function of x. Here, as you can see on the integration sign, I have written a and b. It means we are integrating it between two limits. A is the lower limit where b is the upper limit. A is the lower limit where b is the upper limit. Means we are integrating it between point A and B. So how to solve it? What we'll do is we'll put upper limit minus lower limit. Let me explain this with the help of example so it will be easier for you to understand. I have taken an example that y is equal to sin x, and now I have to integrate it between 0 to pi. Pi is the angle, 0 is also angle. As we know that SI unit of angle is radian, so we will be discussing it in the form of radian. So I need to integrate this function between 0 to pi, or you can say I need to find out the area under the sin x curve from the point 0 to pi. Now how to do this? As we know, integration of sin x is equal to minus cos x. So I written the upper limit and the lower limit. It is what we do next is we put these values in the variable and upper limit minus lower limit. So here the variable is x. So what I'll write is, first I'll write the upper limit, that is cos pi. In place of x I will write pi. So cos pi minus sign will be always there, cos lower limit. In place of variable we write the lower limit, so it will be 0. On solving this I get answer minus 2. Let's say if it was cos x square, I am assuming it, let's say, then how to do this? We'll put like this, cos, in place of x we'll write pi square as it is, upper limit minus lower limit. In this way you are going to solve it. So this is the way we undergo definite integral, and as you can see I have not written any plus c because we are getting a discrete value over here, so we don't need to write any constant of integration. Now moving on, we are going to study an important concept which is widely used in both physics and mathematics, and that is factorial. Now what basically factorial is? It is a product of all positive integers less than or equal to the given positive integer, and it is always denoted by an exclamation mark. Let us understand with the help of example. Let's say if it is asked what is factorial 7. So what we'll do is we'll multiply 7 and all the smaller positive integer up to 1. So factorial 7 will be equal to 7 into 6 into 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. That will be equal to 5040. So factorial 7 is equal to 5040. If you have been asked factorial 4, then it will be equal to 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So factorial 4 will be equal to 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, which will be equal to 24. It is widely used in binomial theorem, that's why we are studying it. You must note that factorial 0 is always equal to 1. This you will learn in detail if you have opted for mathematics, else you need to remember this only, that factorial 0 is always equal to 1. Next we are going to study binomial theorem. All of you know what is a plus b whole square. It is a square plus b square plus 2ab. Now what is a plus b whole cube? It is a cube plus b cube plus 3a square b plus 3ab square. What if I ask what is a plus b to the power whole 5? Now how are we going to solve this? For this we use binomial theorem. Now let's study binomial theorem. There are some conditions. If n is any number, positive, negative or fraction, where x is any real number such that x is less than 1, then this is the binomial expansion, or you can say binomial theorem. 1 plus x to the power n will be equal to 1 plus nx plus n into n minus 1 upon 2 factorial. We have already discussed what factorial is, into x square. Moving on, n minus 1 into n minus 2 upon factorial 3 into x cube, and so on up till infinity. So this is the binomial theorem. Let us understand this with an example. If I ask what is 1 plus x square, we know that it will be 1 plus x square plus 2x. Now let us derive this using binomial theorem. So 1 here, 1 x as it is, n here n is equal to 2, so I put 2, 1 plus nx, then n minus 1, so 2 into 2 minus 1 upon 2 factorial into x square, then n minus 1 into n minus 2. So if I put it over here, I'll get 2 minus 1, 2 minus 2 upon 3 factorial x cube. As you can see, 2 minus 2 is 0, so I have directly written 0 over here. So it will be equal to 1 plus 2x, 2 minus 1 is 1, 2 as it is, factorial 2 will be equal to 2 into 1, that is equal to 2. So it finally becomes 1 plus 2x. Binomial theorem is widely used while studying gravitation and other important topics of physics. Next we are going to study some important formulae of trigonometry which would be widely used while deriving some formulas in physics. First of them we'll study our addition formula. Sin A plus B is equal to sin A cos B plus cos A sin B. You can't just simply multiply that sin A plus sin B. It will be sin A plus sin B is equal to sin A cos B plus cos A sin B. हम इसको अंदर मल्टीप्लाई नहीं कर सकते कि ये अंदर मल्टीप्लाई कर दिया डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लॉस से आ गया, नो. Similarly, cos A plus B will be equal to cos A cos B minus sin A sin B, and tan A plus B will be equal to tan A plus tan B upon 1 minus tan A tan. What if we put B is equal to A? It means we are considering both angles to be equal. A and B are basically angles, so we are considering both angles to be equal. Then if I put B is equal to A in above 3 formula, then we'll get sin 2A is equal to 2 sin A cos A. Cos 2A will be equal to cos square A minus cos square A. And as we know, sin square A plus cos square A is equal to 1. Please remember, sin square A plus cos square A is equal to 1. And cos square A minus sin square A is equal to cos 2A. We can't write sin square A minus cos square A. इसको उल्टा नहीं कर सकते. यहाँ उल्टा कर सकते हैं, बट यहाँ पे नहीं. तो cos square A minus sin square A is equal to cos 2A. Using this, if I put value of cos square A, I'll get 1 minus sin square A. If I put over here, I'll get 1 minus 2 sin square A. Similarly, I can get 2 cos square A minus 1. And for tan, it will be tan 2A is equal to 2 tan A 1 minus tan square A. Moving on, we'll study difference formula. So sin A minus B will be equal to sin A cos B minus cos A sin B. Similarly, cos A minus B will be equal to cos A cos B plus sin A sin B, and tan A minus B will be equal to tan A minus tan B upon 1 plus tan A tan B. These are some basic formula which you must learn or you must remember, as it is of great importance while deriving various formulas in physics. Next, we'll study expansion of trigonometric functions. In physics, there are many assumptions. As we'll move on, sometimes if the angles are very small, then it is written that sin theta is almost equal to theta, whereas cos theta is almost equal to 1, and tan theta is also written almost equal to theta. Then how can we write this? It is just because of the way sin theta and cos theta are expanded. Sin theta is equal to, if I expand this, then sin theta is equal to theta minus theta cube upon factorial 3 plus theta 5 upon factorial 5 minus theta 7 by factorial 7, so on. Similarly, cos theta 1 minus theta square upon factorial 2 plus theta 4 by factorial 4 minus theta 6 by factorial 6, and so on. So if the theta is very small, if the quantity is very small, then cube of it will be much smaller. So we can neglect the higher term. So we'll get sine theta is almost equal to theta if theta is small, and cos theta is almost equal to 1 if theta is small. One thing which we need to remember is theta should be in radian. Thank you for listening patiently. Thank you.